Good morning. Welcome back to my channel, Global Time Traveler. Appreciate you being here. Hope you come back again. Hope you enjoy the content here and that you enjoy yourself and have a good time. I know I'll have a good time. So for today, I have 6 micro brand watches from a company called VENEZIANICO, located just outside of Venice, Italy. I have 2 divers, I have a sports watch, and I have 2 kind of more dressier quasi-sports watches as well. So we're going to take a look at all of those. I'm not going to go through all the various boring specs and sizes. I'll allude to some of it, but we're not going to get a deep dive into all of those. We'll look at the design, the function, talk a little bit about some of the basics of these watches, and then you can decide for yourself what you think. Up front, to answer the question of are these watches worth it? Absolutely, they are. I have seen some other YouTubers talking about how these ones have a little bit higher price than some competing brands, and that may be true, slightly. However, I do think in the design and the style and the uniqueness of some of these watches really adds an awful lot to the value and the desirability of them. Before we get into it, let's take a look at what I'm wearing today. So today I've got my Heinrich Helicoprion that I got from Wolfgang Heinrich in Stuttgart. I think on the first video I said that they were in Frankfurt, so I apologize. I will also caveat up front that any and all misspeaks, errors, and complete and total BS that comes out, it's all this guy's fault. Nobody else. So take all of that, please, with a grain of salt. I do my best to try and get all of the information as accurate as I can, but on occasion we all get things wrong. Some of us more often than others. All right, so let's talk about VENEZIANICO. And if I'm mispronouncing words, I apologize for that up front as well. So VENEZIANICO, like we said, is a small company located just outside of Venice. They have a line of 4 different families of watches, and they also offer some limited editions. They got started back in the latter half of the 2010s. The 2 brothers, Alberto and Alessandro Morelli, got together and decided they wanted to start a watch company. This was when they were at university. So these 2 young men took the bull by the horns and got started. And they produced some watches that are beautiful in design, lovely in execution. Currently, they use off-the-shelf third-party movements. However, they have just developed their own in-house movement called the V5000, and I expect to see that coming out very soon in some of their newer models. All of their items ship in a very nice embossed box, and they all include a multi-page brochure that talks about the history of the company, the men themselves, and then the family of watches that they do offer. I would like to say that Alberto, the CEO of the company, has recently been appointed to the Academy of the GPHG, which is the organization that annually issues awards for some of the best watches in all of the watch industry. A great honor, a recognition for what he has done, what he's achieved, and the future potential that he and his company hold. Congratulations on that honor, and I know you'll make yourself and make the entire community proud. So their atelier is located in a small town, about 30 kilometers from Venice, just up to the northeast on the edge of the Po Valley, in between the magnificent Dolomites and the beautiful waters of the Adriatic. Back in the mid-90s, I was fortunate to spend some time in that part of the country. And if you get a chance to visit Italy, and you should, I highly recommend spending some time up in northern Italy. The food, the culture, history, people, the scenery is all spectacular. You'll love it. Absolutely love it. As I had said in my introductory video a week or so ago, all of the watches that I show here are ones that I purchased myself. I haven't received any of these or any special discounts or any sort of compensation for this. So these are ones that I looked at and thought, I like that. I think I'll buy it, which I've done far too often. But the ones that we're going to look at today, like I said in the beginning, there's 2 dive watches. They go by the family name of Naride. Okay, so I have two of those. One is an Oreo, which is a 24 karat electroplated gold dial. The second is a Tungsteno, and that has a mother of pearl dial. It's beautiful. I have two from the family of Redentore. The first is an ultra black that's got a muso paint on it that is highly absorbent of any light. So it's a very deep black when you look at it. The second Redentore is an aventurine dial. That glass, that deep blue glass that is embedded with different metallic particles that sparkles in the light like a brilliant night sky. Absolutely spectacular to look at. And then the final watch that I have, the third Redentore, is called a Bellinote. That is a very unique dial. It's got a relief of Venice with an offset hour and minute dial on the face of this watch. When we take a look at that, I think you'll be really impressed with it. And then the final watch that we have is the Arsenale, and that one has a meteorite dial, a natural gray meteorite with all the different striations in it, and it's beautiful. And all six of these watches range in price from about $500 up to about $1,200, depending on the model and depending on the dial they have and the movement inside as well. We'll get started with the two dive style watches. As I said, these are Naride Oreo with the gold, and the Naride Tungsteno with the mother of pearl. These both carry in 42 millimeter, although they're also offered in 39 for those with smaller wrists. My wrist is about 22 centimeters, about 8¼ inches. So anything smaller than about 40 looks silly on me. That's like the curse of a big stupid wrist. Each of these have 200 meters of water resistance. They're both made of 316L stainless steel. There are some differences, however, between the two watches, primarily in the bracelet and the movement. The bezels on each are made of tungsten steel. They're 120 click, and as you see, they sound good. There's no back play on them, and they click very precisely into the desired place. In terms of what the bezel accomplishes for you, I've heard some people talk about, for a dive watch, it's about how much time you've been down underwater. That's actually backwards. It's how much time you have left before you have to come back up again. Now, would I wear these diving? No. I wear a dive computer. So I wouldn't take these in the water. But that being said, you could. So let's start with the Oreo. As I mentioned, it's got a 24 karat electroplated gold dial. As you see, there are applied indices all the way around, stick indices with a double up at the top. There's also an applied index just below the 12 o'clock position with printed information for the brand name, VENEZIANICO, and then the model down there at the 6 o'clock position. Around the outside is the minute track, and then the 3 o'clock position is a framed date window. This particular model has a Salida 200-1 in the guts, whereas the Tungsteno actually has a Miyota movement in it. As I said, the company makes use of third-party movement makers and puts them into their watches, but they are coming up with their own in-house movement. I like third-party movements, as I mentioned in the introductory video. They're reliable, they're accurate, they're good workhorse movements. A little bit more on the Oreo. As you can see, the dial is absolutely beautiful. So it's got a very lightly textured metal disc beneath the gold, and then there are several layers of gold that are electroplated on top of it. The crown is signed. It's got crown guards to protect it from any dings or other strikes. And if you look on the backside, a feature of all of the watches is all of them have engraved solid case backs. These ones are screwed down and feature usually a depiction of something having to do with Venice. So Venice being the inspiration for the brand. The logo, the Renaissance cross, was actually taken as inspiration from the clock tower in St. Mark's Square, where Alberto and Alessandro happened to be walking one day, looked up and thought, that is a very nice, beautiful symbol of Venice, so we'll use that. The Tungsteno model, as I mentioned, has that beautiful mother of pearl dial. If you look at it in low light, it's very dark, almost a deep forest green. But as it gets into the light, you can see all of the different colors that come from that mother of pearl. From this angle here, I can see greens, purples, a little bit of yellow in there, some pinks. It's just absolutely beautiful. Again, the indices, the hour and minute hands, the second hand are all the same between the two models. There is loom with these. I wouldn't call these loom monsters, but it does give you some low light performance to be able to see the time and make a determination. They have BGW9 Superluminova that's applied so that in periods of darkness, you can see the time as well as the indices. Now the bracelets. The Oreo has a brand new Sansovino 5-link bracelet. As you see, the outer and innermost links are brushed. The 2 and the 4 are highly polished. It's fully articulating, very nice on the wrist, very comfortable. There's a 4-position micro adjustment. It does require tools, however, but you can get the exact right fit that's good for you. As far as removing links, they are screwed in. This particular bracelet came quite large. I had to remove 2 links from it to fit my big fat wrist, but it was very easily accomplished and it's very comfortable for me. The Tungsteno has the Canova bracelet. You see the difference between this one has an H link format, brushed with the center links, again, being highly polished. This one is a little bit heavier than the Oreo, but is a very nice fit as well. Again, the articulation of this is excellent. The cases are pretty much identical. Nice sweeping curves coming down the lugs. Lugs are nicely curved with chamfers on both edges, being nicely polished as well. We talked about the bezel already, nicely knurled, but a good feel. And the crown itself is a really good size, very easy to adjust and set. I will say that the Oreo with the Solita movement adjusts a little bit more smoothly than does the Miyota. However, in no means would I say that the Miyota is harsh in any way whatsoever. Both watches are terrific. And if you're in the market for a nicely designed dive watch, I think this could be a good choice for you. Now let's take a look at the 3 Redentore pieces. As mentioned, we've got the Ultra Black, the Aventurine, and the Bella Notte. When I first looked at these, I was really enamored with the Ultra Black. A few years ago, when I first got interested in watches, one of my grail pieces was an H. Moser Endeavor 3-hand in the H. Moser Vanta Black. I thought that was just the ultimate in elegance. However, that watch is over $20,000, whereas this watch was a little bit closer to $500. Does it have the H. Moser heritage, the in-house handcrafted movement? No, but it's also not $20,000. However, when I got them, when I received these watches, the one that I really liked was the Aventurine. Just take a look at that dial. The sparkles off of that Aventurine glass. Absolutely beautiful. So this one became my favorite of the 2. The Bella Notte, as I mentioned, has an offset hour and minute dial the relief, the portion of St. Mark's Square. The dark sky in the background is aventurine. So you see the sparkles off of that as well. And then there are 3 firework bursts in the sky. I think this one is just absolutely beautiful. The cases are the same on all of them. They are 40 millimeters in width. They're about 10 to 11 millimeters in thickness. I think it's just over 10 millimeters. So they sit very nicely on the wrist. The Bellanote and the Ultra Black come on an Italian leather strap. We've got a very similar Canova bracelet on the aventurine, was very similar to the Tungsteno that we just saw. Again, on the backs, wonderful engraving. You see this one is looks to be a satellite. Very nice engraving. On the back of the Bellanote, in an image from Venice. Very pretty. And on the aventurine, a little bit harder to see a similar structure from Venice. Let's open up these clasps. So one of the things about the clasp for me is they are milled, they are nicely signed, and they move very well. But again, no micro adjustment on these. One thing that some people may find a little bit of a niggle with is this has to be closed sequentially. This little tab has to be the second one down. If you go opposite, it won't close. At first, when I first put these on, it took me a couple of moments to get used to it, but once you figure it out, very easily accomplished, and it poses no problems whatsoever. The Ultra Black and the Aventurine both have Miyota 9000 series movements in them. The Bellanote is a little bit different. In order to achieve the offset in the placement of the hour and minute hands, they had to go with a smaller movement. So they took a Seiko N805A from a lady's watch and were able to offset that inside of the case in order to make the pinion protrude from the dial where they wanted it to be. I can't say that is a unique idea. Perhaps that has been done before. I don't know, but I do think it is a very creative approach to get an artistic design that you wanted with a particular piece. As you can see with all of these watches, there are no indices on them. On the Ultra Black and the Aventurine, there is simply just the Renaissance cross located at the 12 o'clock position. It does make it a little bit difficult to set the exact time. However, for me, I don't use these watches to know the precise time. If I need that level of accuracy, grab your atomic clock smartphone and it'll tell you down to the millisecond what exact time it is. So if it's 11:24 or 11:25, it's close enough for me. If you're going to be late and you're worried about is the time correct, my recommendation, leave home a little bit. The last watch we're going to take a look at today is the Arsenale in the Meteorite. While similar in layout to the Redentatores, it is executed just a little bit. Case is slightly different. The crown is slightly different. And the bracelet is different. While it is also Canova, it is a new version of that in a flat style. Where you saw with the Aventurine, those were slightly rounded and oval in shape. These ones are very flat, reminiscent to some of the 1970s sports watches that have been so popular with the recent years. And I don't need to name which ones. Looking at the dial, you can see the beautiful meteorite stone that's been cut and placed on there. You can see all the different striations that are on it. Just absolutely beautiful. I'm very keen on astronomy and geology and space in general. So having a multi-million-year-old piece of space rock on my wrist, I think is cool. If you look at the difference between this and the Redentatores on the dial itself, The indices are much finer, much smaller. The hour and minute hands are sword style and has a very similar second hand to the other two models. The bezel itself is conical, rising up from the edge of the case, and you can see that there is a slightly domed sapphire crystal on the top. All of these watches are sapphire crystals. The divers are flat. The redentatories, like the Arsenale, are slightly domed. I'd probably call it a box because it doesn't seem to really have any sort of complex curve to it. It just rises up from the bezel and then is flat across the top. All of them anti-reflective coatings, tends to have a little bit of a blue tint to it, which on the redentadors is very nice and blends nicely with those dials. On the Arsenal, I really don't see an awful lot of color tint from the anti-reflective coating, so it's a little bit more clear, and I think that is a nicer match for this particular watch. I talked a little bit about the bracelet. Again, as with the other, it's sequential in how it needs to be closed. If you close this portion first, it just doesn't click in. So it needs to go one side first, followed by the other, and then it clicks nicely in. Again, screws for the links, being able to remove those to get a fit. It fits you perfect. Now this bracelet, I would say, isn't quite as articulative as the other Canova, but again, it fits very nicely. You can see the lugs on this kind of angle down from the case itself. You may, on certain wrists, you may get a little bit of gap in here between the skin of your wrist and the case itself, as it is very flat along the back, but I don't think that's going to cause any problems for anyone. Signed crown once again, and also, as with the other two redentatories, it has a Miyota 9000 series movement inside. No date window on this. The only watch that we saw that had a date window was the Oreo, but that's just fine. I don't really require a date window for my particular watches. So there are the 6 watches that we're going to take a look at today. I hope you enjoyed it. I love these watches. I think they are great value, beautiful designs, and make a statement on the wrist. Now, do I really care what someone else thinks? Not really, but I like them. And I buy what I like. I think that you too will enjoy these watches if this is the type of style and design that you're looking for. You won't be disappointed. The next watch that I plan to get from Monaco is the Bucentoro chronograph, probably in a reverse panda. I like that style, but we'll see. Once I get that in my grubby little hands and give it some time on the wrist, we'll talk about that one too. For now, I'm going to close with some foreshadowing for the next one. The next video I plan to do is going to focus on affordable chronographs. I just received a Ferlin Mari and I bought a Monchard. Both of those have the Seiko Mecha Quartz movement in them, so that the timekeeping function of it is quartz reliability, quartz accuracy, but the chronograph function is purely mechanical. So it's a hybrid movement. It's quite affordable. They're each between $400 and $500, somewhere in there. So we'll take a look at those and talk about the design and the finishing that they've put into those. Quick shout out to Watch Chris. I didn't talk about him in my introduction. I apologize. I missed that one, but I love your content. Love what you do. Keep doing what you do. And in closing, I'll ask, if you have the time, the desire, and the inclination, subscribe, please. It would help me. But if you don't, that's okay too. Do what you need to do. As I always say, you do you. And so until next time, just remember, you've got all the time in your world. Take care.